Hey everybody, hope you're doing good today. This is my mug that I'm using today. It's the Space Needle. I went there a few years ago, went all the way to the top, which, if you know me, that's pretty amazing because I don't like heights. And it was pretty trippy. You can feel it moving up there, and even worse, the thing spins. I survived. And so today, you guys, I'm coming out of Matthew 27. It says this: As evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it could be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and placed it in the tomb, into a new tomb that he had cut out of a rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance to the tomb, and he went away. Mary Magdalene and the others, and the other Mary, was sitting there opposite of the tomb. And so we see here he had been arrested, he had been crucified, he had died, and the resurrection hadn't happened. They now see that his body is buried, and the disciples, they go into hiding, and so many people are left wondering what happened. Everything that they knew or thought they knew had been disrupted. They didn't know what was to come, and there they were in the silence between the day of Jesus' death and what would be his resurrection. There was that day of nothing, of silence, of not knowing. There was uncertainty. I'm sure they had questions. What was going to happen in this moment? Where was God in this moment? And it kind of got me thinking, you ever been in that place? You feel like you're just in a place of silence. Man, I've been there. I remember as a kid one time, I would go to church and I just felt like, man, God was, you could feel God there. Like the services were great, the worship was great, everything was great. And then I hit a season where it just seemed like God was silent. And no matter how hard I tried, it was like I just couldn't, feel him because we measure it by feeling. And I learned, God isn't measured by the feeling of him, but in knowing him in relationship. But in that moment, I just remember, and it seemed like it went on for a while, just like, God, where are you? And I was in that season of silence. Maybe you've been in this place. All you know is that everything you thought you knew had been upended. Everything that you saw was certain now was very uncertain. Everything you thought you understood was now confusing. And so you're in what I call the silence in between. You're just in that moment of awaiting, of not knowing and wondering. The reality is we're in between death and new life. And maybe it's not a literal death, but maybe it was a job that had ended, a job that you've lost. In this season, there's a very real reality that many things in your life have been upended, and you're just in a season of confusion, and it just seems like God is silent, and so much seems uncertain. And so we're in the in-between. We're in between death and new life. We're in between what you knew and what you thought you knew and what you know and what is to come. And you're in between the crucifixion and the resurrection. I remember there was a time where my dad had lost his job at a paint store in Marysville because they closed down. And so we ended up moving to Sacramento, and he got a job there. And then he ended up getting a job. We moved to Ohio, and he got a job there, and he was promised some things that didn't come to fruition. And so, that didn't last. And pretty soon we'd ended up back in California where we had grown up. We ended up back here. And then my dad finally got a job at a place where he would work till he retired. And I just remember thinking of that season where the uncertainty that my parents must have felt, the questions they must have had, the seeming, unanswered promises or unfulfilled promises and all those things. I'm sure it felt like at times so many more questions than there were answers. But you know what we discovered? In the midst of the silence, God is there too. And he is at work. Between the death and the resurrection, God was at work. He's on the other side of the silence, already working for us. And where there is silence, there's promise of resurrection. And so I invite you today, maybe take some time to sit in the silence, for God is speaking, and we just need to stop and listen. Guys, I hope you have a good day today. It's Saturday. We're in between remembering his death, and tomorrow we celebrate his resurrection. And so, in the silence, there is space for God to speak to you today. And that if you are in a season of what seems like silence, if you're in a season of silence, God is at work. He goes before you and he is with you. That is a promise we know to be true. You guys have a good Saturday. We'll see you hopefully at service tomorrow. Bye.